evening and welcome to this edition of KTN Prime. My name is Betty Callow.
Well, and I'm James Smart. The highlights.
No turning back. Ruto's case to be heard in The Hague.
A place called Nigeria, Mathare drug raid turns chaotic.
If you escort duty, you will be deemed to have escorted, and appropriate disciplinary action will be taken in line with the law.
A government threat and a defiant union, more agony for parents.
And moment of truth, Uhuru's report card 100 days later. Well, this is KTN Prime. Good evening once again. Our Deputy President William Ruto and his co-accused former radio journalist Joshua Arap Sang will have to attend their trials in The Hague, Netherlands.
Well, this follows a decision by the International Criminal Court trial judges to deny them their plea to have the cases heard in Arusha or Nairobi.
Well, the decision that was released earlier today also means that the duo have now exhausted all other options to have the trials held elsewhere but The Hague.
And as our senior reporter Aaron Ucheng reports, the Hague-based court cited different reasons to deny Ruto his plea, one of them being the security of the witnesses.
Deputy President William Ruto and former radio journalist Joshua Arap Sang will after all pack their bags and head to The Hague, Netherlands for the trial of the case facing them after the ICC judges rejected their plea to have the cases heard either in Kenya or Arusha in Tanzania. Ruto, who had requested the court on the grounds of being a sitting deputy president, had hoped that the cases would be brought near home so that his national duties will not be interfered with too much. Early last month, the same judges rejected Ruto's plea to attend the trials via video link, and Monday's decision will be the second setback that has hit the deputy president in less than a month. While rejecting the plea, the judges said they have extensively discussed and considered all of Ruto and Sang's submissions and concluded that it will be in the best interest of the court, the witnesses and all the involved parties to have the trial at the headquarters of the court. The statement from Hague further said that the judges took into account numerous factors such as security, the cost of holding proceedings outside The Hague, the potential impact on the victims and witnesses, and the length of the proceedings to be held away from the seat of the court. The development will be a setback to government initiative to have the cases back either in the country or at the very least in Africa, while key proponent Attorney General Githu Muigai's effort hitting a dead end. Hours before the ICC made the announcement, he was optimistic that the African Court of Justice mandate would be extended so that it would handle other African cases, including the Kenyan cases.
We wish to once again reaffirm the dedication of the government of the Republic of Kenya in its support for the work of the court.
Currently, the court does not have criminal jurisdiction. So if those cases are taken out of the ICC, they cannot be brought to the court.
The trial of Ruto and Sang starts September 10th, and the court has requested Ruto and Sang to be present at the opening of the trial. Aaron Ocheng, KTN.
And now to some vicious battle in Nigeria. Well, that is an estate right here in Nairobi. And today it was the scene of a dramatic battle linked to the drugs trade in the area. Police shot a young mother during the raid but had to flee from angry mobs that pelted them with stones. But as KTN's Edith Kimani reports, police say the mother was killed by a stray bullet.
It starts with a few people scuttling, and before long, mayhem. Police on one side firing in the air and throwing tear gas. On this side, a daring lot walking closer to the security officers who they want behind bars. This single bullet created the situation, a stray shot that killed an innocent woman who was nursing her child as police pursued wanted drug traffickers in the slum. Fueled by anger, the residents took the woman's body, refusing to release it to security personnel until the officers responsible for her death were behind bars. But the OCPD said it could not have been a simple trade-off.
We don't know for sure from whether there were other people with the motive of repassing the officers, but I don't want to talk much about it because that is a subject to investigation.
Eventually, the residents released the victim's body to the morgue, but not before a dramatic showdown with the police. Edith Kimani, KTN Prime.
All right, now to a stand of a different kind, and this one is about Kathy Kilonzo and her bid to get back on the ballot paper. Kathy will now know her fate on Wednesday when the High Court rules on her case against the IEBC. Kathy is challenging the Commission's decision to strike her off the list of candidates on allegations of registration fraud. KTN's Sophia Wanuna is following that developing story.
Will the daughter of the late Mutula Kilonzo successfully overcome the remaining hurdle in her quest to lead the people of Makueni County? Kathy Kilonzo's fingers remain crossed on whether she will contest the Makueni senatorial seat. A three-judge bench today directed that the entire case be heard Tuesday. This due to time constraints ahead of the July 26th by-election. With the by-election just 10 days away, Council for IEBC requested that the petition be disposed of by Wednesday to allow final preparations to take place. The hearing will begin 10 a.m. Tuesday and is expected to end early afternoon.
I think we recognize, all of us in here, that there is really no luxury of time, and these proceedings will therefore have to be expedited.
Kathy Kilonzo and the Wiper Democratic Movement are the two petitioners seeking to have the decision by the IEBC tribunal that blocked her from vying on grounds that she's not a registered voter overturned. While the IEBC Dispute Resolution Tribunal, and the Makueni Returning Officer are the three respondents.
The hearing of the petition will be by way of written submissions. I think we are all fairly accustomed to that now. Each party will be allotted time, that is 20 minutes, to highlight their written submissions.
In a pre-hearing session at the Milimani Law Court, the judges stand down Isaac Alucher's application to be admitted as a friend of the court.
The application does not seem to have a leg to stand on. We ask for the court to dismiss us.
Candidates already gazetted by the IEBC for the Makueni Senate race are LPK's Jane Kitundu, NAC's Philip Kaloki, John Harun Mwau of PEAK, and Abanas Mudhaka, who is an independent candidate. Sophia Wanuna, KTN.
Now, court leaders have maintained the alliance will not change its stand to have IEBC overhauled before the next general elections. Led by former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, they reiterated that the alliance will not participate in the polls being conducted by the current IEBC commissioners if the body is not reformed urgently. Raila has also maintained that he is still going to remain very active in Kenyan politics.
The former Prime Minister Raila Odinga has repeated his declaration that CORD will not go into another election without a radical reform of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC.
Tume ya uchaguzi ni tume iko na uchafu mingi zaidi. Wana mambo ya unafiki, wana mambo ya ufisadi mingi zaidi ndani ya tume ya uchaguzi. Na tumesema hatuwezi kurudi kwa uchaguzi tena Kenya hii.
Raila is walking a tightrope and watching his comments, well aware that it would be virtually impossible to have the current commissioners of the IEBC removed. Article 251, subsection 1 of the laws of Kenya say that a constitutional office holder can be removed from office if the member commits a serious violation of the constitution, commits a gross misconduct, he or she is physically or mentally incapacitated, he or she is declared bankrupt, or there is evidence of incompetence. If any of this is the case, then a petition has to be presented to the National Assembly for debate. If the motion is passed, Parliament sends a recommendation to the President, where a President will appoint a tribunal to investigate the officer in question. It is the recommendation of the tribunal that will determine whether the officer will be removed from office.
I, Ahmed Isaac Hassan.
As it is now, the current commissioners of IEBC plus their chairman enjoy security of tenure in the office for 6 years, and having been sworn into office on November 14, 2011, they will cease being IEBC officials on November 14, 2017. Meanwhile, Raila has also insisted he is still in politics for a while.
Huwezi kujua kama Hassan ni chairman ya TNA ama ni chairman ya IEBC.
The court leaders have insisted that IEBC officials are being used by Jubilee to frustrate the opposition. Aaron Ocheng, KTN.
All right, and it's almost 100 days, those dreaded days that will start asking for those promises that were made to you by this government.
And now KTN's Anki Guta joins us to begin our week-long series of Jubilee's first 100 days in power. And what were the promises? To open up the super wall and also look at their first pledges. They had pledges in the health sector that were very key. They had promised, of course, to abolish fees at public dispensaries. They have also promised to abolish all maternal fees. And the third promise under the health sector was this, to stock health centers. So we'll be taking a look at these three issues shortly. Let's look at the other pledge that they had made, and that is in the education sector. The Jubilee government has promised to keep children under the age of 18 in school. We'll be talking about that. And of course, the big one that has caused a lot of controversy, laptops for every standard 1 pupil. Well, we do know that effective June 1st, it was free delivery for mothers in public hospitals across the country. This wasn't effected immediately. There was a concern from the health heads at specific hospitals that they hadn't received a written directive from the Director of Medical Services. Well, hospitals, that was another pledge that had been made, that hospitals were to be stocked. We have not received any word from the Jubilee government that any such thing has been done, and it is truly a dire situation. According to the Kenya Medical Practitioners Association, they say they are lacking basic equipment. And when we talk basic, we really mean basic. As far as gloves are concerned, syringes or other equipment such as monitors, etc., even beds are not there. So certainly this is a big challenge, and we're yet to see the government act on that pledge to stock hospitals. What we do know right now is that the health sector in Kenya is receiving approximately 5% of the budget. That means for every 100 shillings that the Jubilee government is going to spend, only about 5 shillings goes to the health sector. And what does this mean for the country? This is the 4th year in a row that the government has decided to cut the spending on healthcare. This is contrary to the Abuja Declaration that we are signatories to, that pegs it at 15%. So certainly it is impossible to see how real spending, without real spending in healthcare, how any of the other interventions that the Jubilee government has made so far will be effective. Right now, we know that the total is 95 billion shillings overall that has been allocated to the health sector, and as I've mentioned, a little bit over 5%. Okay, so that's what it looks like in as far as the Jubilee government's pledges on the question of health are concerned and implementation. We want to now draw your attention back to the super wall as we now talk about education matters and, of course, the issue of laptops that has been the subject of much comedy and also anguish as far as teachers are concerned. We understand that now they are due on this date, January 2014. But even before we get to January 2014, there seems to be an upgrade of the project
possibly looming, with the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Education saying that we do need to give the children tablets instead of laptops. He says research shows that in the next 5 years laptops will be phased out, and so hoping not to be caught up with that, he would want them to go straight to the tablet matter. But that isn't concrete yet, and we'll see what their deliberations will mean so far. But one of the things that we do know is that they have been able to cut the projections in as far as how much one device will cost, and right now it stands at the figure of 8,500 shillings per device, and that means the savings from this figure, that money will be churned out into other projects that will help ensure that the laptop program runs smoothly, including the training of teachers, the setting up of computer laboratories, the setting up of storage facilities, and so on. All of this information came out of a cabinet brief on the same. Let's move forward and still look at the question of education. We do understand that there is a bid to have these devices manufactured locally. That means it will bring down, of course, the cost of the program and ensure sustainability. There is expected to be a partnership between private firms and the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology to do the same. You will remember at the very start of this whole discourse on laptops, JK Uwati did come out to say that we can actually make laptops, we can actually make computers here in Kenya. And so this is an avenue that the government seems keen to pursue. We also do know so far that there is a curricula that is being made right now dealing with what exactly will pupils be able to access in terms of content on these machines. And then, of course, there are teachers who are being trained to do the same. But really, the question of education and the Jubilee government's pledges cannot be seen without looking at the question of the teacher strike that is ongoing. In fact, today enters week 4. Just today, we had the Attorney General saying that any teacher who does not report back to school in compliance with a court order should be sacked. And we've heard the Ministry of Education also speak strongly on the matter today, warning teachers that if they're not back in classrooms tomorrow, then they do stand to be fired. Let me tell you what NATA are agitating for. They have rejected a 17 billion shilling offer, I beg your pardon, that came out of the Teachers Service Commission. We also know that they basically believe that the 1997 deal that the Salaries and Remunerations Commission has already declared defunct, null and void. They believe that they are still owed dues by the government to the tune of 46 billion shillings. Well, that's it from me here at the Superwall. That's what the Jubilee government has been able to do in 100 days. Yet more work remains undone. Back to you, Smart and Betty.
Well, thank you very much. And now, those promises by the Jubilee team may have been based on the assumption that government operations would kick off smoothly under the new administration.
Well, the last 3 months have been anything but smooth for the new regime. KTN's Rita Tinena now looks back on what officials insist were teething problems.
When Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta took over the reins of power on the 9th of April 2013, it was on the back of lofty promises and heightened expectations from his supporters. The pair of Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto was soon to start putting in place a government to steer Jubilee's ambitious agenda.
It is indeed our intention to put in place a cabinet that has the capacity to deliver not just on the manifesto, but to deliver on the promise of a transformed nation.
In Parliament, the Jubilee side has largely had its way thanks to its numbers, but it has not been all rosy for the young administration. Just days into office, the Jubilee government got a taste of what to expect, and it came from some of its foot soldiers, members of Parliament. MPs were up in arms over a move by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission to set their salaries at just over 530,000 shillings. In a show of defiance, the MPs voted unanimously to degazette the new salaries. The move was met with firm resistance from the public, including dramatic street protests dubbed Occupy Parliament. But the MPs had their eyes trained on the Sara Serem Commission.
I have started the process of removing that commission out of office.
After weeks of a stalemate, MPs arm-twisted the SRC and secured a tax-free car grant and extra allowances. Teachers, it appears, picked the cue from MPs. The teachers' strike, called by the Kenya National Union of Teachers, now in its 4th week, is the latest headache for the government. Not even a plea from the president, a warning from the Education Cabinet Secretary, and a court order have served to get the teachers back to class. NAT, which is demanding the full implementation of commuter, medical and house allowances under a 1997 deal, has rejected a government offer on commuter allowances, vying to continue with its strike until the government puts a better offer on the table.
The strike is fully in force.
But MPs and teachers are not the only ones giving the government money troubles. Nurses too have a similar prescription. County representatives managed to secure a deal that will see them take home about 200,000 shillings, but at an extra cost to the taxpayer. The government is increasingly finding it hard to meet the demands, saying the wage bill is not sustainable.
We must remember that our sectoral demands as counties, as interest groups, as trade unions and so on, have a direct impact on other sectors of our country.
Aside from money matters, insecurity has dampened what would otherwise have been Jubilees' honeymoon period. From the Bungoma attacks, in which more than a dozen people were killed, to clashes in parts of northeastern. In Mandera and Wajir counties, the Gare and Degodia clans have engaged in an on and off conflict that has left at least 88 people dead, dozens more injured, and hundreds displaced from their homes. And the government is still looking for the formula to tackle insecurity in the country.
I wish to assure all Kenyans that I will not rest until every Kenyan feels safe.
The takeoff of the devolved system of government too has not been smooth. From supremacy battles between governors and county commissioners to protests by governors over what they term as underfunding by the central government, the new system of government may have hit some turbulence, with claims that Uhuru's government is frustrating devolution. The president was forced to meet governors and, in a move seen as an attempt to appease them, ordered that they be issued with diplomatic passports and special vehicle number plates. As the country seeks the right footing on the path to devolution, Uhuru Kenyatta's key pledge, laptops for schools, hasn't exactly been a click away. The project, that is to cost the government at least 53 billion shillings, has become a punching bag for government critics who dismiss it as too ambitious, especially at a time when teachers are on strike over pay. The government has defended the plan, saying it is part of a bigger development program.
Out of the 53 billion, 15.4 billion will go towards provision of electricity in 12,000 schools.
The Jubilee government has a few things to its credit, such as free maternity services in public hospitals and the early signs of openness in government. But with public expectation growing by the day, the next 100 days are likely to present an even more crowded agenda for Uhuru's government. Drita Tinina, KTN.
Well, we'll be going back in a short while to our 100-day audit coverage. But for now, if you have a child in public primary school, there is more bad news for you tonight. That stalemate between the teachers and the government is getting more complicated.
Well, a few hours ago, the government ordered striking teachers to report back to work tomorrow morning or face the sack.
In court, Attorney General Githu Muigai asked to commit NAT officials Wilson Sosion and Mudzon Zili to civil jail for contempt of court.
Well, but as our judicial reporter Winnie Kamau found out, teachers remain as defiant as ever.
The standoff between the Teachers Service Commission and the Kenya National Union of Teachers, NAT, has taken a different turn, with the government threatening teachers who are still on strike that they will face the axe if they do not comply with the government's demand.
If you escort duty, you will be deemed to have absconded, and appropriate disciplinary action will be taken in line with the law. And the laws are several. Yes, TSC, labor, all that. That's what I said.
In a press briefing at 3 p.m. on Monday, Labour Cabinet Minister Kazungu Kambi, Education Cabinet Minister Professor Jacob Kaimenyi, and TSC Chairman Gabriel Lengoibon tabled 7 conditions that NAT should follow. These include all teachers who have not resumed duty and want to remain in employment of TSC should report for duty by Tuesday, 16 July 2013 by 8 a.m. without fail.
Every employer has certain disciplinary action measures which are taken. That's why we don't spend a lot of time here. TSC will do exactly that.
At the same time, the government requested Kenyans who are qualified teachers to report to the district education offices for a countrywide recruitment, which was a precursor deal to the employment of 10,000 teachers yearly. In a quick rejoinder, NAT Bruce Secretary Mudzonzili dismissed the government's threats, saying, as paraphrased, that they are not the Kenya Union of Cowards, but Kenya National Union of Teachers, and they cannot live under threats. Kaimenyi should stop intimidating teachers. But before the industrial court Monday morning, a loud silence ruled. A contempt case hanging over the top brass Wilson Sossion, the national chairman, and Mudzonzili, the acting secretary general, listened as their learned friends baptized them new names, contemptors. Not in their defense, pro-lawyer Chacha Odera told Lady Justice Lynette Ndolo that Sossion and Nzili had no powers to call off the strike, and only the National Executive Council of NAT had the power to do so. NAT claims that 10,000 shillings had been chopped off some of their salaries, and forcing them to go back to work on empty stomachs was unconstitutional. The Attorney General, through State Counsel Richard Njoroge, asked the court to penalize teachers who are on strike for contempt, and Sossion and Nzili should be committed to civil jail. The AG also wants the Teachers Union NAT to be fined 20 million shillings for contempt. He has also asked the court this morning to slap every single teacher who is still on strike and has failed to return to work with a fine of 10,000 shillings. Wene Kamau reporting for KTN.
The Big Q, in association with Nguvu Cement.
Well, indeed, just before we take a break, that story brings us to a big question tonight when we ask, do you think teachers should obey the order to return to work? Do you think teachers should obey the order to return to work?
Well, send us your yes or no answer with a short comment to the number 8040, and Smart and I will sample them during this bulletin.
Choose Nguvu for undoubted strength.
Coming up in business, Kenya has until October 2014 to finalize its EPA agreement with the EU or risk losing its preferential treatment. But what are the opponents of the EPA agreement saying to this? Well, Adelaide Changole has all those details. Also, $113 million, the amount that the AFDB has committed to the Taveta Voi Road. Stay tuned.
All right, welcome back. This is KTN Prime.
What's in a name? In the case of the place known as Grogan, there is a whole history that is tied to several sports across the country.
Well, Grogan derived its name from a white settler who left the country in 1910, over 50 years before the country gained independence.
Well, he died in South Africa in 1967, yet Grogan did leave his mark, as evidenced by the sport named after him and in several other sports that bear the evidence of the impact of his life in Kenya.
Well, here's this week's segment of our 50th Independence Anniversary series with Will Kistanyabwa.
At the heart of the city, the artisans slave under the glare of the sun, keen to make up for lost time. They have only just come to an agreement after a row over the little corner on land on which their establishments sit. One will not find a sign proclaiming that this is Grogan. But the workers here know no other name for a place whose history they have gathered in bits and pieces over the years and passed from one to another.
The name Grogan ilitoka kwa settler fulani mzungu wa kitambo sana.
Alikuwa analinda hii kiwanja kutoka huko Globe mpaka huko chini.
Kwa hivyo jina Grogan lilitoka kwa jina lake alikuwa anaitwa Grogan.
During the Africanization, when all these streets were changing name, Tomboya Street, Government Road and all that names, so when they change them to Kirinyaga, people don't usually familiarize very quickly.
Yet while their estimation of how the lot got its name is accurate, the whole tale leads one right across the town. Chiromo House stands smack in the middle of the University of Nairobi's Chiromo campus. Almost 100 years after it was built, it still bears the initials of the man who built it. Ewart Scott Grogan built and moved into the house in 1905. After an adventurous life that had seen him volunteer in the Matabeleland uprising in Zimbabwe. When he returned to New Zealand, he met the great love of his life, Gertrude Watt. In order to convince her father to allow him to marry her, he undertook the great walk from Cape to Cairo, accomplishing the feat in 2.5 years and winning his bride, whom he brought to his new house. He named his new home Chiromo, after a village in Malawi.
When Grogan was coming from South Africa, he arrived at a place in Malawi called Chiromo, where all his luggages were stolen. On arriving here, because Chiromo in Malawi is between two rivers, and this place was almost equivalent to Chiromo in Malawi, he named it after the name in Malawi, Chiromo.
But Ewart was often away, and Gertrude was so lonely, eventually she went back home. Just 5 years after moving in, Ewart sold the house, but he left on the house stamps of his identity. Grogan is believed to have been a Freemason. The new owner, Macmillan, died in 1930, and the house was eventually bequeathed to the University of Nairobi, which built a campus around it.
The wartime British Prime Minister Winston Churchill was housed here. American President Roosevelt was also housed here.
And thus you would imagine the story ended, but not so fast. Before his departure, Grogan had donated land on which a hospital was built named after his beloved wife. This would be the first of the group of Gertrude's children's hospitals. The little stretch of land through which Kirinyaga Road now runs was also part of Grogan's vast holdings. Though the land found new owners, it would forever be known to workers here as Grogan.
Particularly when the older generation were coming, that is the name they usually prefer. You know, normally when you change a name, people don't move so fast with it.
The Chiromo University campus, Gertrude's hospitals, and the corner known as Grogan all intertwined in history, and yet only Grogan still bears a corrupted form of the name of the man who lived here. Wilkis Anyabwa for the 50-year series.
The Big Q, in association with Konzos Cement.
Well, we're just about to take another commercial break, but before then, a reminder to our big question tonight, in which we asked, do you think teachers should finally obey the order to return to work tomorrow? Well, send your yes or no response with a yes or no comment to the number 8040, and Smart Now will sample them during this newscast.
Good evening and welcome to Business. My name is Boni Tunya. Kenya has until October next year to finalize negotiations for the economic partnership agreement with the European Union, or risk losing her preferential trade status with the EU. Now, speaking during a press briefing, the EU Trade Commissioner said the negotiations, which have been ongoing since 2007, must now come to an end to enable the two regions transition to other developmental matters. But even as these proponents laud the benefits of the EPAs, opponents are digging in their heels. Adelaide Changole has more.
The European Union and the East African Community have been negotiating the Economic Partnership Agreement, EPAs, since 2007, with little progress being made towards turning the interim deal into a permanent contract. But the EU is now saying time has come to ratify the agreement that grants Kenyan exports duty-free and quota-free access to the 500 million strong consumer market in Europe.
You have to make up your mind. You have to put your act together before the 1st of October next year.
The stakes could not be higher for Kenya, which is the only country in the EAC that is not classified as a least developed country and would therefore be the only country in the region to lose all preferential benefits with the EU, leaving its exports subject to normal tax laws that would eat into companies' bottom lines.
Exports of flowers to the European Union would have to pay a custom duty of 6%, which is presently not the case. Now, on an export volume of 330, 6%, it roughly accounts for 20 million euros.
But opponents of the deal argue that the EPAs will offer undue advantage to products from other markets at the expense of local and regional industries, which will have a knock-on effect on the country's agriculture and manufacturing sectors. But the EU Commissioner of Trade rubbished this claim, saying the deal benefits both Kenya and Europe.
We are not flooding your market, you know. You know who is flooding your market. It's not Europe.
The Jubilee government wants to conclude the long drawn-out pact by the end of the year to safeguard multi-billion shilling exports to Europe. But this will be hampered by a motion passed by Kenyan legislators 2 weeks ago, stopping the government from entering into an economic partnership agreement with the European Union before all the contentious issues are dealt with. Adelaide Changole, KTN Business Today.
The African Development Bank has today extended a $113 million loan to the government of Kenya for the upgrading of the Taveta-Voi Road. The road is part of the 157.5-kilometer project from Arusha in Holili in Tanzania to Taveta and Voi in Kenya, approved by the bank in April of 2013 in an effort to help reduce the cost of transport between the two countries. Philip Keitani has more.
Under the same agreement, the Tanzanian government is expected to get an additional $120 million for the construction of the same road on the Tanzanian side, whose completion date is set for December 2018. The road is expected to enhance easy access to agricultural inputs, large markets and social services within the East African region.
Infrastructure, particularly transport connectivity, has been a binding constraint to the development objective of the East Africa region.
The project will involve the upgrade of the 89-kilometer Taveta-Mwatate road and the construction of the 12-kilometer Taveta bypass and two roadside amenities on Bura and Moktau along Mwatate-Taveta road in Kenya, and a civil works for the construction of the 42.4-kilometer Arusha bypass and the dualling of the 14.1-kilometer Sakina and Tengeru sections, as well as the construction of two roadside amenities at Tengeru.
Other areas of our economic transformation will be investing in irrigated agriculture through modern and efficient farming methods that promote farming as a business.
The project is part of the East African community integration process of improving regional transport infrastructure to help support economic and social development programs in the region, to promote tourism and foster regional integration, and at the same time reduce the cost of doing business by supporting cross-border and international trade. Philip Keitani, KTN Business Today.
National Oil has entered into a petroleum capacity building research and development agreement with the University of Nairobi. The agreement outlines a number of areas for collaboration and partnership, including training and research in petroleum sciences. The partnership comes at a time when Kenya is facing a shortage in qualified personnel to work on the emerging petroleum sector, which has been a rise in activity following recent oil and gas discoveries. Though the agreement, National Oil and the university have undertaken to partner in a number of areas covering institutional capacity building through short-term courses and staff exchanges, information exchange and sharing of equipment and technical expertise. National Oil recently recruited 34 management trainees who are being trained in various aspects of the upstream petroleum exploration and production, including geology, geochemistry, geophysics, petroleum economics and law. And finally, real estate developer Home Africa debuted in the Nairobi Securities Exchange today, pricing its 405 million shares at 12 shillings per share. Now, this makes it the first company to list by introduction on the recently launched growth enterprise market segment, if you like, GEMS. Now, listing of the shares will give Home Africa 128 shareholders an opportunity to value their company established in 2008. Home Africa has grown over the last 5 years and is worth an estimated $100 million. The developer is currently handling a 10 billion shilling property portfolio, which includes Migar, Lakeview Heights, Langwe and Kikwetu housing projects. It has been relying on shareholder funds and commercial banks to finance the projects, but the listing will give the real estate firm wider funding options. Right, and talking of the markets, here is a look at the market numbers coming from the NSE. Well, that's all we had time for in business. My name is Boni Tunya. Good night.
All right, and now time for your sports brief. Now, the triumphant Rugby 15s team jetted into the country today morning and was hosted by the Rugby Union to a breakfast with all eyes now set for the World Cup. Now, the team clinched the African title and is now 2 matches away from the World Cup, with their South African coach Jerome Powerwater insisting that his charges are in the right frame of mind but should be cautious. Now, they beat a hard-fighting Zimbabwe 29-17 in Madagascar on Sunday to reclaim the crown they last held in 2011. The Kenya 15s team is now the top African nation, with the exemption of South Africa, who would not take part in the tournament due to their position as a top 3 team in the world in the International Rugby Board rankings.
We had a tough time in Kampala against Uganda. We had a tough time in Kasarani. And the focus was, I don't think the guys even know it, that the focus was that we're going to take them off the pitch and forever keep them mouth shut, and that they know that Kenya is here to mean business. And that's why the score was so big, guys. They couldn't do anything.
We are back to business. And I would like to tell the whole team and my board and the technical bench that the hard work starts now. Gentlemen and ladies, we are only 2 games away from the World Cup. England and Wales 2015. Only 2 games away. It might sound very near, but it's a very, very long distance. We have so much to do, so much work to do.
All right, double world champion in 5,000 meters and 10,000 meters, Vivian Cheriot will not accompany his colleagues to Moscow, Russia for the World Championships as she's expecting her first child. However, the police inspector believes the team is better equipped this time round than 2011 in Korea.
I want to say that they should work hard for the next 1 month, because World Championship is very near, and I want to tell them that success, and they have to go and run as Kenyan team, not to run as an individual. Like now, I'm expecting my first child, I should be at home, but I say I should come to see and watch and enjoy. One thing I know automatically, Ethiopians, they are happy because I'm not there. But they should not see me alone because they don't know the athletes from Kenya well, especially the top three. But I know they are going to do their best.
All right, now Kenya Deaf Olympics teams who are preparing to represent the country in this year's Deaf Olympic Games are hoping to surpass the 2009 Kenyan medal haul in the Games. The Deaf Olympic Games are slated on the 27th of July to the 4th of August in Sofia, Bulgaria. Kenya will be represented by a squad of 41 members, and expectations are high that this team will better the results posted by their colleagues 4 years ago in Taipei. Now the team won 7 medals, 4 gold medals, 2 silvers and a bronze in 2009. Kenya will be represented by track and field events with basketball among a team expected to fly the Kenyan flag. Safaricom has pledged £1 million for the gold medal winners.
We're pleased to say that for every bronze medal attained, we will give the medal winner 300,000 shillings. For every silver medal, we will give the medal winner 600,000 shillings. And of course, you shouldn't be concerned about those. You should just be concerned about the next one. Because your association with Safaricom means that you will be coming back with more gold. And therefore, we will be giving 1 million shillings to every...
All right, FC Leopards on Monday unveiled its new players who will steer them through the 2013 KPL season. The players include Peter Opio, Michael Hamati, Sadiq Kadir, and Dan Wagaluka from Uganda. The team also announced former Lugari MP Cyrus Jirongo as their patron. Soon after the ceremony, the team headed to Mumias Sugar Sports Complex as they prepare to lock horns with Mathare United as the Kenyan Premier League resumes this weekend. Coach Luke Amel, who was on vacation in Belgium, will link up with the team in Mumias.
We have utilized our mid-season transfer season to inject quality, fresh blood into our squad with view of realizing our aim of bagging the 2013 trophy. We are proud to unveil players from various talents, various backgrounds, and highly trained technical bench which has actually worked hand in hand in actually identifying these players.
FC Leopards mwaka huu tuko tayari na hizo mechi zimebaki, tunachukua kwa hali ya juu kuona kwamba mwaka huu tumeweza kushinda ligi kuu ya FKL.
Well, this is where we wind up today's edition of KTN Prime. Thank you very much for watching. Tomorrow we continue our 100-day audit of the Jubilee government. My name is Betty Kylo. Have a lovely evening.
I would like to apologize that we were not able to bring you the results of that big question. Unfortunately, our equipment that is not working. But we'll definitely tomorrow get back in and indeed engage more on social networking sites, Twitter and Facebook. Thank you very much for your company. My name is James Smart. All factors remaining constant. We'll see you tomorrow.